Welcome, everyone. As always, thank you for supporting my work. If you have a question, just drop it over in the chat. It has been a tremendous month for fans of all things space, hasn't it? In other words, us. All of your questions today are about the Auroras or Starship. You and I are on the same page because that is definitely what I am going to talk about. And there's a question. Thank you for the photos of your library. My wife, Deborah, wanted to see photos of your kitchen too. You know what? I will do that. I will send some to you. It's an awesome kitchen. It's a normal kitchen. There's nothing really space about it. Though Mr. Jensen has indulged me in letting me hang space art in the living room. But nothing spacey about it, but it's a nice kitchen. We love the library so much. You know, I had not planned on sharing that here, but that's a good point. I will see if I can pull up those pictures and share them here too for you guys. Because we are super excited about having a real library again. Just sort of go in there, sit on the floor, and smile at all our books. So anyway, but space first. Big month. First, the natural phenomenon. Did you see the auroras where you live? So I've lived far enough north for the last 3 years or so since we moved to Montana and then Idaho for them to be visible a couple of times a year here. But it's just in the house that that I've got visibility to the horizon, and also not so much light pollution from city lights and that type of thing. So this big show, I guess it was 2-3 weeks ago now, was the first time that I got to actually see them live and in person. And it was so awesome. Of course, I was not the only one this time. The Sun put on such a big show that they were visible across much of the US, and I assume other parts of the world as well. Even my family and friends back in Georgia, where I grew up, got to see them and take some pictures of them. So that was really neat. It was so cool. One of the great things about social media, and there are many pros and many cons about social media, but where it really excels is at moments like this when there is something happening around the world and everybody's experiencing it at the same time. And we're all able to share in the excitement of it. And so, you know, everyone was posting their pictures on Facebook and on Twitter. Here's my aurora. Here's my aurora. Here's my aurora. And it was just such wonderful enthusiasm. It really warmed my heart. So on that note, here is my aurora, my poor attempt, first time ever, of taking pictures. So this is one right overhead above my house. And then this is obviously looking out my neighborhood, looking to the east, I think. So, you know, they're not great by any stretch, but they're mine. And so I am really thrilled to have them. I know a lot of readers shared their photos on my Facebook page. If you've got any great ones, email them to me. I would still love to see them. So if you did get to experience this, and if you took pictures, then you are familiar with the fact that what your eyes see in the sky is not the same thing as what your camera sees. And it has to do with how our eyes can process light and color in the darkness, especially, versus what camera sensors can process. So these pictures that I shared, the storm was intense enough that night that I could see, you know, the entire sky was moving, but it was moving in these hazy waves with just a hint of light greenish color. So there was no doubt that there were auroras up there. We could absolutely see that, but the color wasn't really there. Obviously, you take the pictures and they're just bursting with color. There's been, I wouldn't say there's controversy about this, but, you know, there's been some discussion. It's a thing. In my opinion, this doesn't make the pictures any less real just because they don't show the same thing as what our eyes saw. All those colors were there to be seen. It's just that, unfortunately, our eyes aren't built to see them. And that's a shame. Boo evolution. But at least we have cameras so we can still see and experience it. So I thought that it was just wonderful. It was just a joy. And then right after the auroras left, there was the comet. It's officially called Comet Shushan Atlas, but everyone's calling it A3 for obvious reasons. So this guy dazzled our skies for a week, 10 days, just after dusk. And above the horizon, it was sporting this really long, dramatic tail. So it really put on quite a good show. Unfortunately, I never got a good picture of this one. It's not that it was particularly overcast here, but it never failed that around dusk, there were clouds, on the horizon and up just a little bit. And the comet never got a good chance to peek through for me. So I didn't get a good picture, but others near me, others in the area did. And so I got to enjoy those. And the astrophotographers really came through on this one. Love those guys. So there are many great pictures, but I'm going to share what I personally think is the best one that I saw. Check that out. A long tail and the streak at the bottom coming out the front of the comet. I want to say it's called the anti-tail, which was not something I knew about until this comet. But that's really neat. So that's taking up, virtually, the entire sky there. Really amazing. So, Mother Nature and space has really been treating us this month, hasn't it? But we treated ourselves too. Let's talk about Starship, guys. So last month during the live stream, we were worried that it was going to be the end of the year before Starship had its next test due to government regulatory matters. And we talked about all that. Thankfully, the government got out of the way. I don't know what might have been going on behind the scenes to make that happen, but all of a sudden, overnight, boom, clearances were ready to go, and they launched less than 24 hours later. And what a flight it was, right? The biggest news, but got everybody really excited, was the fact that on the first try, the Mechazilla arms on the tower caught the Super Heavy booster in midair. Not just unproven technology, but unheard of technology. SpaceX came up with this idea and invented it out of whole cloth, built it, and made it work on the first try. So if you have not seen this video, then you really have to. So I'm going to share this real quick. It's just about 20, 30 seconds. It's really something else. There you go. And what a beautiful morning sunrise. They could not have planned that. I assume that they didn't, but it could not have been a more picturesque scene for the launch and that landing. Just absolutely beautiful. Made my heart sing. So that's amazing. But everybody's kind of forgotten. In the meantime, while that was happening, Starship completed a perfect flight and a soft, gentle landing in the Indian Ocean. It hit its mark precisely. Absolutely nothing went wrong. So soon, I don't know if it will be the next test flight, but soon, Mechazilla is going to be capturing Starship as well, the same way. The booster obviously will land first. It'll be caught like that. The arms will swing it off to the side and set it down, and then they will move back into position. And then Starship will land, and it has the same wings to catch, and the arms will sweep in and grab it as well. And when that happens, then the era of a rapidly reusable spacecraft is here. So what does that mean? Why, other than the amazing visuals and everything, what does that mean for the future? Why is this a big deal? Well, rapidly reusable. So, right now, obviously the boosters land, and that's amazing to see. But then they have to be recovered, especially with the sea landings. They land on a barge. The barge has got to come back into dock. Then they've got to transport the booster to the hangar, clean it up, inspect it, all of that, and then transport it to the landing pad and get everything set up, and then attach the rocket to it, ready for the next launch. Now they're doing that pretty quickly now, but this system here with both the sections being reusable, the idea is that they will be able to turn around flights in a matter of days and eventually within a matter of hours. So these boosters, the Falcon boosters now they're flying. We've got several that have flown 20, I think even 30 times. So they know how to inspect them quickly. They hold up really, really well. So the booster lands, it's moved over, it's sat down. Instantly, people start inspecting it, making sure there was no damage and it's ready to go again. Starship lands, they move it over. Maybe they set it down over here, and next to it is the next Starship ready to go, all clean and everything. So they pick up that booster or another booster, they flip it around, put it in place, move over, pick up Starship, move it over, lock it down onto the super heavy boosters, and everything is ready to fly again. Yes, it is probably, they probably use a second Starship simply because payloads, we're talking, we're flying here for a reason. Those ships are going to be full. So they've got the next one sitting right next to it, filled up and ready to go, lock it in place, and it flies again. The pace is going to be extraordinary. And so that's a big reason why this matters. Also, why are they catching it and still landing it on, instead of landing on a pad right there? That's about weight. Mass is everything in space flight. Getting out of Earth's gravity well is and continues to be the biggest challenge that we have in space flight. That's what takes the vast majority of the rocket fuel. That's why, it's such a big show whenever rockets launch. The power and thrust required to get out of our gravity is immense, which means that you can't carry as much because the heavier something is, the harder it is to launch off the ground. So the legs that the boosters use to land onto the ground or on the barges, they're heavy. They weigh a lot. They take up a lot of mass. They're also big and bulky. The primary purpose of the tower and the Megazilla arms is to do away with that mass, to make the boosters lighter from the beginning, and thus easier to launch. And that's more weight that can then be transferred into the payloads for Starship so they can carry more each time. So a lot of strategic thinking involved here on SpaceX's part for the future of our space exploration. So while this is flashy and looks awesome, there are good engineering and scientific reasons for it happening. And so, yeah, this was a great test. A lot of poetic words were spilled on the internet about this being, today I witnessed the future of space flight, and I think they were wrong. So also, finally, like I said, a big month, Europa Clipper launched last week. So this is a European Space Agency mission that is going to Jupiter's moon, Europa, to search for organic chemicals on the icy surface, as well as other signs of a habitable environment and evidence for the ingredients of life. Officially, they're not actually looking for life on Europa yet. They're looking for favorable environment that might be conducive to life. It's also going to study the icy shell of Europa in detail. And all of this is work towards identifying potential good spots that a life hunting lander could touch down and operate in the future. But we will attempt no landing there. Not yet. Don't worry, aliens. We're not doing it yet, but we will. I mean, we always do, right? Forget the warnings. I'm referencing 2010, if anyone doesn't know. So we will get there and we will touch down, and hopefully it won't turn into a space horror movie when we do. But it's going to be a while. For instance, Europa Clipper itself is not arriving on Europa until 2030. My goodness, we need faster spacecraft engines, right? And this also gets back into the mass thing and fuel. We can't send as much fuel up in our spacecraft as we'd like because fuel is also mass. And the more fuel, the harder it is to get it up in the air. So our spacecraft engines have to be very efficient, and efficient means slower for now. There is much work being done on that area. Many great ideas and research being done on alternative propulsion engines. I won't go into that today, but the sooner that happens, the better, because 2030 is far too long from now just to get out to Jupiter, First coffee. Finally, our now regular monthly feature of AI for Good stories. I've got two today. One in our area of interest, and pretty relevant to what we've been talking about today. A team of aerospace engineers at Stanford are using AI to speed the planning of optimal and safe trajectories between 2 or more docking spacecraft. They call it ART, or the Autonomous Rendezvous Transformer. And they say it's the first step in an era of safer and trustworthy self-guided space travel. In other words, they're taking self-driving car technology and trying to apply it to spacecraft in space. Most immediately, like I said, docking. So one of the many things that Starship is going to be doing once it starts going to the moon and then to Mars is going to be refueled in space. So it is going to be docking in space for refueling. Also, the plans for Artemis and the lunar base and all of that involves a lot of orbital docking as interim steps between here and the moon. So obviously right now, when our crew capsules go up to the ISS, then they have to dock with the ISS. And so that's something we do now. The docking is going to become a lot more important in the future. And these guys are working on using AI to make it autonomous. So, no, hands off from Houston. We will not be involved. But then beyond docking, we're talking about space travel, on its whole. Everything is about trajectory. When you're trying to hit a moving object, obviously, all of our planets and moons and asteroids are orbiting. So they are moving as well as spinning while the spacecraft is moving. And orbital trajectories is deep math. And if AI can help with that, then all of the better. So the second story is we've talked a lot about how much AI, one of its early areas of real concentration is in health and medical. And this is a case, this is about cancer treatments, which is obviously hugely important. Researchers at the National Institute of Health have developed an AI tool that is using our databases that we get they take individual cells inside tumors and can analyze them to predict whether that person's cancer will respond to specific drugs that we have available. Now, this analysis is something that we can do today without AI, but it's very expensive and not at all widely available. So it's frankly not being used for your average cancer patient. So the innovation here, though, is that researchers are using machine learning algorithms on the data banks that we have of both bulk cell sequencing and individual sequencing of cancer cells. And then the AI is more precisely predicting which drugs will work for a given patient based on all of that learning. And the early results are very promising. So I wanted to drop the links to these two stories into the chat here so you can read more about it if you would like. To forgive me, I have many windows open on my computers to be able to show you guys all of this stuff. So there is the self-driving in space story. And here is the cancer treatment story. There you go. So with all of that news, then I think it's time for today's reading from The Universe Within. Now, so far in the readings I've shared, we've learned how Alex and Caleb were able to sneak inside the Alakri's bubble universe. And we've met the two main Alakri characters, a physicist named Laurent Cavani and a Truva named Dunan. So in this scene, so Alex and Caleb are now on the planet, and they are using this brand new shroud technology to outwardly appear to be Alakri. Now, you may remember that in Medusa Falling, Marley used a shroud to appear Bella Scotian in the big final mission up to the space station. And in The Thief, Aaron and Nix used shrouds to appear Faesoon when they went to visit those aliens at the end of the book. So this cutting edge technology is a thread that's running through all three of the books. So here, Alex and Caleb are using it to blend in as they visit this alien world. So today we're going to pick back up with the scene that I read last month from Dunan's point of view as she meets Alex, Caleb, and Lawrence for the first time. Excuse me. Take a sip of water here first. I've got the latest round of COVID running around here, and I'm not really sick in any way, but it's kind of there at the margin, scratchy throat and whatnot. The man looked like he'd fallen out of a Ceylon tree into a sponge pit filled with sugar-dosed 6-year-olds. His clothes were wrinkled and knocked askew in a lean frame, with one decorative pin missing and another clinging to the workmanlike fabric for dear life. His mahogany hair, though cut scandalously short, pointed in so many directions that Doonan had to wonder if he'd recently taken an electric shock. Still, his emerald to amber eyes radiated openness, as if he held nothing in reserve, a clear mistake on his part. He was almost cute, in a rumpled professor sort of way. The two people who flanked him were... Her senses tingled to life. In a manner she couldn't define, they were wrong. It wasn't that the man on the left gave off a predator or even killer vibe, or that the woman was strung as tautly as sail ropes in a hurricane, both of which were true. It was more that they wore their skin like it was a set of ill-fitting clothes. Finally, something interesting to liven up her night. She placed a hand casually on the guard's shoulder. Is there a problem? These people don't have a code for entry. Please, the professor interrupted. I used to know Tamsy Renishon. Her personal code is 651C2. And I was just about to explain to the gentleman how that wasn't good enough because it's an old code, of course. She cut the guard off. It's all right. I'll take them. Are you sure? I am. She gave the motley crew a cool smile. Come with me. When they reached her booth, her 3 guests slid in opposite her. The killer took the outside, his eyes casing the booth and sweeping across the club beyond it. No one can see inside or hear what we say. The killer stared at her for a moment, then nodded minutely and relaxed a fraction. Doonan slid 3 glasses out from the valet and distributed them to her guest, then pulled one knee up onto the cushion beside her and dropped her chin on it. She considered them speculatively, each in turn, before settling her gaze on the professor. How do you know Tamsy? He sipped greedily on the drink for several seconds before answering. We kept company for about 8 months a few years ago. You and Tamsy. Yes, is it so hard to imagine? Tamsy always had been a bleeding heart, a true softie. Not as much as it should be. Then it will pain you to learn that she's dead. The man spewed his drink across the table, several droplets narrowly missing Doonan's cheek. What? When? How? Okay, he really hadn't known. She took on the wrong client. One of her clients killed her? No, but she got caught in the crossfire when the criminals he ran afoul of killed him. Milady, I'm sorry to hear that. She was a good person. Too good. So what's your name? Laurent Cavani. And you two? Caleb and Alex Morano, the killer replied. You're bonded? The tightly wound woman nodded. Adorable. Well, Laurent and Caleb and Alex, I'm Doonan. What can a Truva do for you this evening? Someone tried to kill Laurent earlier today, Caleb answered. He needs somewhere safe to stay, somewhere unattached to his identity. He seems to think you or this place can help him find such a place. And the surprises just kept coming. Maybe she'd misjudged Laurent, and he wasn't remotely the professorial type. She really didn't think so, though. One didn't become as skilled a Truva as she was without learning to size strangers up with a glance and a passing word. Why is someone trying to kill you? Laurent shook his head ponderously, eyes a touch wide. I do not know. And you two? What's your role here? They saved my life, Laurent replied. We happened to be in the area when Laurent was attacked, Caleb said. We intervened. Do that often? Caleb shrugged mildly. When assassination attempts happened across our path? Yes. Killers didn't typically go around rescuing hapless innocents. So what was this man's story? Was no one here what they appeared to be? Assassination is a word with a very specific meaning. Yes, it is, and it fits what I witnessed. And the assassin? Is there a body and a police investigation to complicate matters? Caleb shook his head. He wasn't dead when I sent him into the river. Given the lack of information I possessed at the time, I didn't feel justified in killing him on the spot. So definitely a killer. She hadn't fallen too far off her game, but not an indiscriminate one. Doonan settled back into the booth and idly stirred her drink. Nothing about the story or the people in her booth made sense. But if she took things face value, which she never did, Laurent Cavani did arguably remain in danger. And people like him were utterly unequipped to survive in the world once the trappings of civilized society were stripped away from them. I don't take culture credit as payment. I'll need hard currency. Laurent nodded quickly. I have some in my apartment. All three of them stared at him. which I can't go back to. Can I owe you? She chuckled lightly and dropped her feet to the floor, readying to send them on their way. No. Look, I feel for you, I do, but I've got to make a living. Lauren, how far away is your apartment? Alex asked. Not far, 10 blocks or so. Why? We'll go get your money. No, I won't have you risk your lives for me again. This is getting out of hand. I'm sure you'll be able to pay us back later, Alex insisted. Tell us how to get there. Lauren gazed at Alex for a moment, lips drawn tight, then relented. All right, the address is, no, an address won't do us any good, Caleb interrupted. Explain how to get there from here. Now she gaped at Caleb, incredulous. You can't access the map overlay? No, we cannot. Where are you from? Your accents are very strange. Paysan. I've been to Paysan. You're not from there. Sure we are. Caleb shifted toward Lauren. Directions? Head right out of the entrance, 4 blocks, then take a left at Crichton. 2 blocks, then a right at Shoal. My building's on the right, 5th floor, apartment 518. The coins are in the top left drawer of the desk on the left wall of the living room. Thank you. Caleb fixed his intense, yet somehow not at all malevolent gaze on her. Doonan, is it all right if Lawrence stays here with you while we retrieve his currency? She sighed dramatically. In truth, she did not intend to let this crew slip away until she'd worked out the story behind their semblance. But she also didn't intend to let on how intrigued she now was. I suppose. But if you're not back in an hour, I am kicking him out. Hey, Lauren explained. Caleb nodded as he slid out of the booth. We'll return long before then. So there you go. The plot thickens. This scene is very necessary to understand everything that comes after, and thus whatever scene I will read to you next month. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you have enjoyed this chat today. Thank you for coming, and I will see you all next